So it appears chefs in Australia are getting invited for permanent residency. So today I want to talk about the requirements for chefs to apply for permanent residency in Australia. Now in this video, I will talk about the 189 visa, which is a permanent residency visa, the 190 visa, which is also direct permanent residency, but also I will talk about the 491, which is the skilled work regional visa. Now that is a 5-year temporary visa. However, there are options that will lead you to PR. And when you do apply for PR, which is the 191, so the 491 turns into the 191, you don't have to go through all the points test again. You can just directly apply. There's just some residency and also salary requirements when you do apply. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tracy Chen. I'm the principal lawyer at Mason Chen Law Group. We are a 100% remote work from home law firm. We have lawyers and agents that work in almost every state in Australia, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and we service clients all over Australia as well as overseas. So if you want to get in contact with myself or one of our fabulous lawyers or agents, I'll drop our contact link below. Now also really exciting, I know that a lot of people know a lot about migration, but some people really, they're just starting this journey and they want to know just some basic information on it. So I do have courses that are available. The website is below, courses.tracymigration.com.au. So if you want a little workshop, a webinar, and learn a little bit more about Australian migration, the courses are linked below. Now before I get stuck in this video, don't forget to like and subscribe and share this with people who need it. Okay, so today's video is specifically about chefs. It's important to note that this is different to cooks. So the people who fall under this occupation code are your chefs as well as pastry chefs. Again, they are different to cooks and bakers. I'll do a separate video for cooks and bakers as well. The qualification is certificate 3, 4 and diploma usually. However, certificate 4, if that is your highest qualification, will also work. In some instances, your work experience can be used in lieu of your qualifications. But look, this depends on what visa you apply for. There's also employer-sponsored visa options. So if you are overseas and you just want to come to Australia to work, you can apply for employer sponsorship. These visas are called the employer-sponsored 482 visa. There's also the employer nomination scheme, so it's the subclass 186 visa. The requirements for that are a little bit different again. I've got videos for all of these visa subclasses, so you can go check it out. Today we'll touch on all these different visa types, but what's more important is for you to understand the requirements to become a chef here in Australia. So let's talk about pathway 1. If you've come to Australia and you studied a commercial cookery course. So generally speaking, you apply for a student visa, you come and study in Australia. You then study a certificate 3, 4 in commercial cookery, and generally speaking, you also do a diploma in hospitality. Once you've completed that, you have to undergo your skills assessment. Now, all skilled visas in Australia do require a skills assessment. So there's a couple ways that you can do that. You can do that through the Job Ready program. I'll put the link below of how you undergo the Job Ready program, but it's something that's undertaken after you complete your certificate 3 and 4 in commercial cookery. Other option is if you do have a qualification and you also have 3 years full-time work experience at any period, it doesn't have to be post-qualification. You could also be eligible for a skills assessment with Trades Recognition Australia or VetAssess. They do accept it if you have that combination. So generally speaking, for those who have studied here in Australia, the combination is certificate 3, 4, diploma in hospitality, and they usually jump onto their temporary work visa, which is a 485 for graduates of Australia. Then they start their Job Ready program. The Job Ready program is kind of like 12 months of work experience, and that is the requirement for trades all across the board in Australia. Once you've completed that 12 months of work experience, they'll do your Job Ready assessment and then issue with a full skills assessment. Using that is what people use to apply for either skilled migration or sometimes even employer sponsored visas such as the 482 or the 186 visa. That's probably a more straightforward pathway, and a lot of people undertake that pathway. But do just remember, once you've completed your courses, you need to do Job Ready program. That is one of the most important parts of this migration journey, because how else are you going to get a skills assessment? There's only 2 combinations. Second one I'll talk about soon. Now in some instances, some people come to Australia, they've been here for a while and they didn't do their Job Ready program or something happened. The second way you're also eligible for a skills assessment is if you have the certificate 3 and 4 plus 3 years of full-time work experience as a chef. That work experience for this purposes, which is skills assessment purposes, does not need to be post-qualification. The skills assessing body will assess it at any point. So that's with Vet Assess or Trades Recognition Australia. So if you fall under any of those combinations, do go check out the requirements or get some legal and migration advice so you can be on your way to applying for, permanent residency here in Australia. The second pathway is more for people who are from overseas. So I know overseas the requirements are a little bit different, people's qualifications a little bit different. Like we have clients from overseas that have done like Diploma of Culinary Arts and those kind of qualifications. Look, they qualify. So if you are from overseas and you do have a diploma in cookery, you can also look at applying for a skills assessment here in Australia. Generally speaking, you have that overseas qualification and it is equivalent to an Australian qualification. So it's equivalent to an Australian diploma. You can also have your skills assessed if you have 3 years of full-time work experience as a chef. So it's kind of the same, but it's an overseas qualification. If you have no qualifications at all, so like no certificates or diploma, or you have something that's completely irrelevant, like you have a Bachelor of Science, you can still apply for a skills assessment, but instead, generally speaking, you need 5 years of full-time work experience as a chef. Now remember, when you're applying for this skills assessments, or if you're using this documentation to apply for any visa, you need to be able to substantiate your claims. So what's really important is you may have worked as a chef, and I know overseas a lot of people are actually paid cash and they have some pay slips and this, that. Look, that's kind of difficult. What you want to be able to prove is pay slips, bank statements, tax documents, insurance documents, employment contract. It's like going on to 5 forms of evidence. Look, there is instances where if you're missing a couple of forms of evidence here and there, they will accept it. But again, that's on a case-by-case basis. And also depends on what country you're talking about. So that's something for you to consider as well. Once you do have your skills assessment, you can look at a lot of different options. You can look at employer sponsorship. You can look at skilled visas. So that's your 189, 190 and 491. Do check out the English requirements for these visas because all of these visas have English requirements. But generally speaking, for any of the independent skilled migration visas, you need at least 6 each in your IELTS. So that is like the basic requirements for it. Now let's talk about what happens on these visas. Employer sponsorship visas, 482, 186, you need your employer to sponsor you. So either way, you need an employer that's ready to go, ready to sponsor you, and you take that pathway there. With 189, 190 and 491, all these skilled independent visas, you first apply and make an expression of interest to be invited first. So you have to make an expression of interest to be invited first. That's the most important step. And I think what everybody's hearing and what we know now is that chefs are being invited. So in the recent invitation rounds, chefs were invited for the 189 visa at 65 points, which is quite achievable for a lot of people. For the 190 visas is a little bit different because it's state to state. So you need to actually understand what the state requirements are. But for example, if you are a chef in New South Wales, in the recent invitation rounds, our chefs were invited at 70 points. So that's 70 points including the state nomination points. So really it was 65 plus 5 points. So I think that is a great era for chefs at the moment. So if you are a qualified chef, first check if your CV meets the requirements, get the right migration legal advice, then you may need to start the skills assessment process, you may need to do an English test, but then once you've done those two, you have all these options you can apply for. And to be honest, chefs are in demand for employer sponsorship. So if you're overseas and you want to come to Australia to work, you can apply for jobs, and I'm sure the Australian employers would have that conversation with you to sponsor you to come to Australia first to work as a chef, because there's just a huge demand for them. We actually have employers that are looking for chefs, so I've put our recruitment email below as well. If you are an overseas chef and you want to apply to work in Australia, send your information to us and we will be in touch. Anyways, I hope you guys found that video very helpful. Now in the next video, I want to talk about pastry cooks and bakers because that is a little bit different to chefs. Anyways, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you guys in the next video.